Walters is back for another season as the official bar of the Nats Chat podcast. Walters is the best spot to go before and after home games, located at the southeast corner of Capitol and N Streets, right across the street from the ballpark.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Now the set by Parker. And the pitch, swinging a line drive into right center field. That's a base hit toward the cap. Over to cut it off is Lile. Run will score, heading for second, Gurriel, and in there without a play. So the Diamondbacks are on the board at the bottom of the first inning very quickly. Last year, 30 home runs for the DBacks. The pitch, swinging a drive hit well to deep center. Hassell going back, way back, looking up, and it is gone. Over the yellow line, 25 feet above center field. A two-run shot for Eugenio Suarez, his 16th home run of the year. It's the Diamondbacks 3 and the Nationals nothing.
And welcome to Nats Chat along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman. He is at Chase Field in Phoenix. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. The Nationals' outstanding streak of 4 consecutive games, each with at least 9 runs, is over. Sunday, a 3-1 loss at the Arizona Diamondbacks to deny the Nats a 3-game sweep and conclude a 4-2 trip out west for the Nats, who in MLB's 2025 regular season now are 28-31. You could find us on X at Nats_chat. You could hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a website that we invite you to check out, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. We have gotten a lot of orders for Nats Chat Podcast t-shirts lately. We're very thankful for that. We appreciate the support greatly. What is up with Nats starting pitcher Mitchell Parker in these first innings? This has become one of the more bizarre issues that we have seen a Nats starting pitcher have. We'll get to that shortly. But, Mark, it's hard to score at least 9 runs every game. And what was especially notable about this game, so the Diamondback starting pitcher was Corbin Burnes. He allowed 1 run in 4 2/3 innings, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk, but then left the game in the top of the 5th due to right elbow discomfort, and you thought that that might open the floodgates for the Nats offense, but the offense never truly got going.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you hate to see him go out like that. The initial report from him and from the Diamondbacks side was that it's just tightness and not necessarily like a singular pitch where he felt a pop or something like that. But he is going for an MRI on Monday, and we'll all wait and see what happens. That would be really, disturbing for him and for that team. He's such a good pitcher, and he just signed this huge contract. Now, having said that, yes, I know the feeling in the visitors' dugout was, okay, maybe this is our shot now, because he had been lights out to that point. They weren't touching him. And they have an opportunity. You get a big RBI hit from Nathaniel Lowe off the lefty, and you're in a position where maybe you can get something going. And you saw, unfortunately, the same thing that they did against Burnes. They did it against Arizona's relievers. And that was they chased breaking balls and off-speed pitches that were out of the zone consistently all game long. This really is the defining characteristic on these games. When they don't hit, it's usually because they are going after pitches that are not hittable, and usually they're not fastballs. When they wait for fastballs, when they get them in the zone, you see the kind of damage they do. And it's why there's been such this wide disparity, I think, between the good days offensively and the bad days. And this was definitely a bad day.
Yeah, the Nats in playing at Chase Field, guilty of chasing. And I did want to note a few things about what happened with Corbin Burnes. So first of all, ultra frightening. He is visited on the mound in exiting the game. And listen, we're not professional lip readers here, but it's all over social media what he apparently said, quote, "My elbow's done. It's dead." end quote. That is a scary thing for a starting pitcher to see. And as we learned with Max Scherzer, these great starting pitchers, they know their bodies better than anybody else. And when a starting pitcher like that is that certain that he has suffered an injury that serious, I mean, look, it's not confirmation that he suffered an injury that serious, but you have to think about the possibility of that being the case. The other thing is this, and, we say this with compassion for Corbin Burnes. We hope he's doing well, etc. But this is year one of a 6-year, $210 million contract. This is why you have to be so careful with paying pitchers big money. This is his age 30 season. If, in fact, this is a serious elbow injury, and I say if, but if, he goes into this big money contract as he's entering his 30s, and he already is dealing with something serious. And this is why it is always a risk to pay these pitchers big money. I get the reluctance from teams to pay pitchers big money. I get the reluctance from ownerships to pay pitchers big money. This, in fact, is like a walking neon sign for this. If, in fact, he's seriously injured, we'll see.
It's also a reminder of just how abnormal Max Scherzer was. They gave him similar contract, a very similar age. And at the time, everyone's worried, like, well, is this going to be worth it or not? Is he going to have to deal with something? And he made it through his 7 seasons with only a couple little blips along the way, and certainly nothing serious. And even to this day, even as he's spent the whole season so far on the IL with the Blue Jays, it's not because of an elbow injury or a shoulder injury or anything that dramatic. It's minor stuff that has kept him out. So it's a good reminder of how he is not the norm. He was absolutely the exception to the rule. We'll see what happens with Burnes. I mean, you could tell he throws the pitch, C.J. Abrams line drive single, and Burnes immediately waves to the dugout. He curses pretty audibly for anybody nearby to hear. And that conversation with the trainer did not last long before he walked off the mound. So we'll see. It would absolutely be unfortunate because he is one of the game's best pitchers. Forget about the contract and any of that. That would be a devastating blow to the Diamondbacks and just to the sport of baseball. He was cruising. He had them eating out of his fingertips in this game. And I mentioned them chasing so much out of the zone. I counted 19 curveballs that he threw. Only 2 of them actually landed in the strike zone, and they still swung at 13 of them, whiffing at 8. And you can say, hey, guys, you got to be better at identifying those pitches. And yes, you do, especially Luis Garcia and Keibert Ruiz, who we know this is a recurring problem. But I think there is some credit to be given to a pitcher who is that deceptive and can make the 2 pitches that he throws, primarily the cutter and the curveball, look so much alike coming out of the hand. And that's why you got those kind of swings.
The Nats for this game, 1 run, 6 hits, 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position, struck out 13 times. The 6 hits were 2 doubles and 4 singles. The Nats' lone run in this game came by Nathaniel Lowe. He is the Nats starting first baseman and number 3 batter, went 1 for 4 with an RBI single. Lowe in a Nats 1-run 5th, a 2-out opposite field RBI single through the left side of the infield on an 0-2 pitch to cut the Nats deficit to 3-1. So good to see that. But beyond that, really not much happening in this game. James Wood as the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 0 for 2. He did draw 2 walks. I mentioned the Nats having 2 doubles in this game. The 2 doubles did come from 2 of the kids in Robert Hassell III and Daylen Lile. So good to see those guys do as they did. But, baseball is just so funny. Each game is its own independent entity. So logically, what happens in one game should not impact what happens in the next game. And yet, we know how this works. When a team is rolling offensively, inevitably, that comes to an end. It doesn't continue. And it did not continue in this game. And, the carriage turned back into a pumpkin in this game with the Nats not only not scoring 9 runs, but scoring just the 1 run, even with Corbin Burnes exiting the game. It's just so funny to me how baseball works that way.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty extreme with this team. We've been talking all year about how it's kind of all or nothing with them offensively, that the nights that they are on, you see it from the start and they sustain it. And the nights they're off, you see it right from the start and they're not able to figure it out along the way. This is what they're going to have to figure out now as they move forward. Can they sustain this? Because as we talked about the other night, there is loads of potential in this lineup to be successful. I don't think it was the complete fluke what we saw over the last 4 days. Maybe not to that extent, again, to score 9 runs every night. But there's enough talent there to think that they can be productive on a semi-regular basis. And so it's, to me, particularly frustrating when you have these nights that it just doesn't go right at all. And, we've talked a lot about like Mackenzie Gore and Jake Irvin on the pitching side, how When they're on, they're really good. And in the past, when they were off, it could blow up on them and they have really bad starts. What have they done so well this year? They've managed to take those nights when it's not going great and still do a good enough job. I think that applies to the offense as a whole as well. Can you take a night when the guy's tough that you're facing and you may only get a couple opportunities, but can you convert just enough, score 3 or 4 runs and give your team a chance? That's the next step for, I think, this lineup to take.
Well, we mentioned Mitchell Parker, and the first inning situation with Mitchell Parker does continue. This is something. So Parker, in this 3-1 loss at the Diamondbacks on Sunday, 3 runs in 5 innings. He gave up 3 hits, which were a home run, a double, and a single. He issued 2 walks. He recorded just 2 strikeouts. He threw a lot of strikes, 66 pitches, 44 strikes, just 22 balls. All 3 of the runs that Parker allowed, all 3 of the hits that Parker allowed, and one of the 2 walks that Parker allowed came in the bottom of the first, as Parker had another bad first inning. He, in that first inning, gave up a 1-out 2-run homer by Eugenio Suarez on a moonshot to center field for a 3-0 Diamondbacks lead. The homer went a projected 466 feet per StatCast. I don't know this for sure. That seems like the longest homer hit off any Nats pitcher so far this season. 466. That is a bomb. But Mitchell Parker now, for this regular season, has a first inning ERA of 10.50. He, over 12 first innings, has allowed 15 runs, 14 earned. He, over the rest of his innings, for the most part, has been good. But he, in these first innings, has been terrible. And we've talked about this. And you, during Davey Martinez's postgame session with reporters on Sunday evening, asked Davey about this. And the Nats don't seem to have an answer for this. Why Parker is so bad in these first innings?
Yeah, Davey claims that they've tried all kinds of different things. You know, there are things you can do to alter your warm-up in the bullpen, the timing of it, the extensiveness of it, or how strenuous it is to try to simulate more like game situations before you come out there. There are things you can do. It sounds like they're trying them, and it's not translating on the field. Now, I mean, the thing about this one and the last one in Seattle to start this road trip that were different than some of the previous ones, these weren't about walks. This was about getting hit and getting hit pretty hard. You gave up 2 homers in Seattle. They gave up a big one here that I think may have landed inside the Grand Canyon. I'll have to go back and check and see if it actually made it that far. So it's loud contact. So he's throwing strikes. He described it as just a lack of execution on the pitches. It's not a velocity thing. It's not a preparation or, pitch selection kind of thing. It's just the execution of those pitches. Whatever it is, he's got to figure this out, because it would be one thing if he was just struggling across the board, but he flips a switch after that. I mean, he's got a 3.4 ERA from the second inning on. That's good. That's like really solid. And he did it again. This one, he retires 14 batters in a row until he gets to the 6th and issues a leadoff 4-pitch walk, and that's the end of his day. So as much as you want to look at this and say, I'm not really sure if Mitchell Parker is a viable long-term solution and maybe his job's in jeopardy and what is he really going to be for this team, you could also look at this and say he's been pretty successful outside of the first inning. How do you overcome this? What do? You want to take the Al Galdi approach and try the opener? I mean, maybe that's what it comes to, although I don't know if they have the right guy to do that. But they got to try something different, because clearly what they're doing right now is just not working.
So I was just about to visit that topic. If ever there was an opportunity screaming for the opener strategy, it is this. Mitchell Parker, wretched in first innings, quite good beyond first innings. Now, look, I get it. The Nats, they don't do this kind of stuff. They don't seem to be open to this kind of stuff. They, in the era of the opener, which goes back 4 or 5 years now, have only done the opener like once or twice. It's you can count it on one hand the amount of times the Nats have done the opener strategy. But this circumstance reeks of give it a shot. And, the Nats bullpen we know overall is not good, but as we have noted, has been better lately. I mean, you think about a Cole Henry, you think about a Brad Lord. What if the next time Parker's rotation turn comes up, you started the game with a Henry or a Lord, had the guy work an inning, maybe more, and then went to Parker? Now, maybe Parker would just struggle in his initial inning in the game, so it would struggle in the second inning or the third inning. But one of the reasons for the opener strategy is that the first inning traditionally is the highest scoring inning. And part of that, of course, is that teams have very good batters batting in first innings, right? Those first three batters. And so maybe that's a part of this here. But it just would be something to try to break this up. Start a game with a reliever and then go to your quote-unquote starter. But again, I get it. The Nats, they don't believe in this stuff. And I'm not holding my breath on them trying this, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't try this.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath either. I do feel like the last couple of years, it's not as prevalent as we saw in MLB. There was a stretch there of a few years that it was like happening all over the place. And I feel like it's not as much. I think the only time in Nats history, if I remember right, it was Matt Grace opening for Joe Ross. And I think it worked, but it wasn't something that they stuck with for any reason. And, a lot also has to do with who are you facing that first time through, the first couple of innings or the first couple of batters in a game? Does a team stack it with lefties or righties? And then you can maybe try to play a matchup early on before switching to it. The one thing I would say that might make sense in this case, you mentioned Cole Henry and Brad Lord, because these guys have starting backgrounds and recently were starters. It might not be that big of an ask of them. It might not be that unusual for them to warm up at the start of a game and come out and pitch the first inning. This is not a traditional middle reliever, late inning reliever being asked to do something totally out of the ordinary for them. So that would be one check mark in a column for giving this a try. We'll see. Again, the Nats are not traditionally the type of team that thinks in these kind of terms. But if ever there was a situation that said, why not? What do you have to lose? Give it a try. This might be it. Because as we talked about 5 nights ago when Parker didn't pitch well, Cade Cavalli keeps knocking on the door here. We're going to see him at some point. We outlined the reasons why that may not happen quite yet. Again, if Parker was really getting lit up all over the place, you'd say, okay, it's time to send him down. But because we are talking about such a specific thing in the first inning and the fact that he's been pretty good after that, if you're going to keep him around and give him some more opportunities, why not try something different that might give him a better chance of having success in the first inning?
And perhaps there is something to this idea of you have Parker continue to start games in a traditional manner because he has to work his way through this. I get that. But if you're trying to win this season and it's no longer about rebuilding, it's about trying to make the postseason, then don't you have to do what matters most in the now as opposed to what matters most in the long term? So, there's another one of these circumstances where there's that push-pull of what exactly are you trying to do with this season? While you were talking, I looked this up in my notes here. July 26th, 2019, a 9-3 Nationals loss at the Los Angeles Dodgers, the game in which the Nats went with the opener. Matt Grace, like you said, was the opener. Grace, a lefty. The Dodgers had a good number of batters who were lefties, right? Cody Bellinger and Max Muncy and Corey Seager and Jock Peterson. And Grace was great. 2 perfect innings, 3 strikeouts. Joe Ross then got lit up. So that was a problem in that game. But if you go all the way back to July 2019, the opener strategy was employed by the Nats, and it did work in that game. Hey, Al Galdi here for Window Nation. We're midway through the year, and for many people, that means summer vacation is coming up. Will your windows keep your home protected while you're away? Save yourself the headache of coming home to a potential break-in by replacing your windows today with Window Nation windows. Right now, when you buy 4 windows, you get 4 windows free, plus you get a free exterior door when you purchase a house full of windows. And on top of that, you won't have to put any money down, pay any interest, or deal with any monthly payments for 24 months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. In this economy, what Window Nation is offering right now is a great deal. Your electricity bill is another good indicator of how well your windows are working, especially with summer temperatures here to stay. Lucky for you, Window Nation offers top quality, energy efficient vinyl windows built to withstand the sun's heat and keep your home cool. And did I mention that Window Nation windows come with a lifetime warranty? Don't miss your chance to protect and upgrade your home with Window Nation windows. Buy 4 windows, get 4 windows free now through June 30th. And remember, you won't pay a thing for 24 months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast.
Life as a small business owner, everything is your problem and there aren't enough hours in the day. That's where LinkedIn Jobs, and by proxy Nats Chat, are here to help. For those crucial hires that you absolutely can't whiff on, turn to LinkedIn Jobs. Simply post your job and LinkedIn will take it from there, making sure it gets in front of the properly qualified candidates who are searching themselves. Find out why more than 2.5 million small business owners have turned to LinkedIn Jobs to grow their staff. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/natschat. That's linkedin.com/natschat to post your jobs for free. linkedin.com/natschat. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you're frustrated with low sex drive, Vyleesi can help. Vyleesi, or bremelanotide, treats low sex drive in women with no daily medication, no alcohol restrictions, and no hormones. Vyleesi is clinically proven to increase your interest in sex. Take control of your sex life on your terms and visit Vyleesi.com to schedule a telemedicine appointment. That's VYLEESI.com. Vyleesi is a prescription medicine used to treat hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, in premenopausal women who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past and have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, situation, or partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to medical, mental health, or relationship problems, or medicine or other drug use. Do not use Vyleesi if you have uncontrolled hypertension or known heart disease. The most common side effects include nausea, flushing, injection site reactions, headache, and vomiting. Consult your healthcare professional for more information and see full PI at Vyleesi.com or call 800-922-1038. Go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to find out if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com.
NetCredit is here to say yes, because you're more than a credit score. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partners. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
To the belt, Martinez. He kicks, he delivers, and the pitch is in there. Strike three call. Caught him looking at a splitter, and the game is over.
So we had what happened with Mitchell Parker in this game, and then we had the Nats bullpen in this 3-1 loss at the Diamondbacks on Sunday. And truth be told, the bullpen in this series was good in 2 of the 3 games. 3 Nats relievers in this game combined for 3 scoreless innings. Eduardo Salazar, bottom of the 6th, faced 5 batters, got 3 outs. Third baseman Jose Tena did commit a throwing error. Salazar did issue a 2-out walk, but no runs scored. Zach Brixey is scoreless and hitless, bottom of the 7th, and Brad Lord, a perfect bottom of the 8th. So the bullpen did its job. And honestly, even with Parker struggling in the first inning, I mean, pitching was not the issue in this game. It was more so the offense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the pitching against a Diamondbacks team that we saw scored 7 runs each of the previous 2 nights in losses, and you held them to those 3 runs in the first inning. You know, they did fine as a whole. That was a pretty good job by Salazar in his return to the big leagues. I mean, he got into a jam, but that was partly created by a really poor decision by Jose Tena to try to get an out at second base that just wasn't there, and he threw the ball away. And then moments later, Tena made up for it with a much better play and decision to throw to the plate on a grounder to third. He got the out there, and then Salazar came through and got out of that, striking out our old buddy Ildemaro Vargas, making his Diamondbacks debut, came up with the bases loaded, and Salazar struck him out. So a nice outing for him in his return from the minor leagues, and Brixey and Lord did a good job, finishing that and at least giving the lineup a chance. And I don't know about you, I did sort of feel like just the way things have been going lately, and given the Diamondbacks pitching struggles, at 3-1, I kept thinking they may find a way to pull this thing off. They did not, and it wound up being yet another example of their fates being determined by whether or not they score first or not. I believe it's now 22-7 when they score first, and 6-24 when they give up the first run of a game. That is so striking, it's almost hard to believe.
That's crazy that that's the case. And yet, if you're following this team, you are not surprised one bit that that is the case. So no game for the Nats on Monday, mercifully, thankfully. I think the team could use it off day. I think a lot of us could use it off day. Next up for them is a 6-game homestand beginning with a 3-game series against the Chicago Cubs at Nationals Park. The Cubs are tied for the best record in the National League at 37-22. The Cubs are killing it so far this season. The Nats starting pitchers in this series, Trevor Williams, Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, each game a 6:45 p.m. first pitch. And it's appropriate that Trevor Williams is the starting pitcher in this game. The best player for the Cubs so far this season is the man known as PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, an outfielder. How did the Cubs get Pete Crow Armstrong? In a trade with the New York Mets in July 2021. Now, most people would label this the Javier Baez trade. It's the trade in which the Mets got Javier Baez. How'd that work out, Mets fans? But also in the trade was Trevor Williams. The trade was Pete Crow Armstrong to the Cubs for Baez, Williams, and cash. So I would think Trevor Williams is finally remembered in Chicagoland for the role that he played in this successful trade for the Cubs. But this will be an interesting matchup here. You have the Cubs, who are doing really well. You have Williams, who had been doing so poorly, but coming off a really nice outing. So going to be interesting to see what transpires Tuesday evening at Nationals Park.
Yeah, let's see if Williams can keep that up. Let's see if this lineup can do what it did for the majority of this road trip and not what it did in the finale of it against a good Cubs team. And we'll probably talk about it more as we watch this series play out. But it strikes me, if you go back to the trade deadline in 2021, the Nats and Cubs were playing each other that night. That's the end of all the deals that the Nats made, the 7 players traded away for all the prospects, the official beginning of the rebuild. On that same night, the Cubs were trading away their guys. Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, I believe. They started a rebuild themselves a couple years after having won the World Series. And so that game that night featured a whole lot of new players and unknown players for 2 teams that were starting from scratch. Well, here we are almost 4 years later. As you said, the Cubs have one of the best records in the National League. They look like a legit contender. They've done it with a combination of homegrown and players acquired in trades like that and some free agent signings as well. They're facing a Nationals team that, while we see the bright lights, of course, we see the progress they've made, they are not yet where the Cubs are in their part of the rebuild. That's an interesting comparison, I think, to make these two teams as we watch this series, where they all are in their rebuilds. And in the Cubs case, it feels like they're beyond the rebuild now. They're ready to win.
I mentioned this toward the end of the last installment of the podcast, where the Nats are in the wild card standings. And I was serious when I brought that up. Like, the Nats are, in fact, in the mix here. As things stand right now, the Nats and Diamondbacks are tied at 28-31, each team 5 games out of the National League's 3rd and final wild card spot. Do you think it is within the realm of possibility that come the trade deadline, Nats president of baseball operations and general manager Mike Rizzo would be a buyer if the Nats remain in wild card contention? Forget about what he might be allowed or not allowed to do by ownership. Just talking about Rizzo philosophically with where the Nats are on the win curve. Do you think Rizzo would be a buyer, or do you think he would not go that far this season?
I think it's entirely possible if they're close enough. 5 games, I think, is too much. If they're more in the 2 to 3 game range, and it also depends on how many teams are in front of you. If you're staring up at 4 teams between you and the 3rd place wildcard team, that's a lot to make up. But if it's a couple of teams and you're only a few games back, I think it's a different story. And we've had this question for a while, always wondering, especially when it comes to their outfield depth in their organization, could they ever use that to go acquire something else that they don't have? And could that be a way to get a bona fide big league star player, whether a hitter or a pitcher, without having to spend all the money that you would have to as a free agent? So I think it's absolutely within the realm of possibility. Now, they've got some work to do. If this was the trade deadline this week, they're not there. I don't think they approach it that way. But if they can have another winning month, just have another 15 and 12 month like we just saw in May, that puts them in the thick of things come July. And I think absolutely. And I think it would be twofold, the reason that they might approach it that way. Number one would be just the mathematics of it, as you said, like they are legitimately close enough that it's worth going for. But I think also there's a psychological element to it of trying to say to everybody, fans, the players, the front office, the rest of the baseball world, hey, we're doing something different now. We are trying to win. We are ready to be better and to not just automatically be sellers every summer. So I think it's a fascinating question because it's not just about the buying part of it. I think it's also about this question of, do you keep Kyle Finnegan for the season knowing he's going to be a free agent? If Josh Bell keeps hitting well, do you keep him for the rest of the year? Do you keep a Michael Soroka if he's pitching well? These guys are not necessarily part of the long-term plan, but they could help you win more games this year. And even if they don't buy, if they were to just keep some of these veterans who are on the final year of their deal, I think that also sends a message to everyone like, hey, we're past those days. Yeah, we might lose them as free agents, but right now we are actually trying to win as many games as we can this year, even if that means passing up a chance to trade a veteran who could bring back a prospect.
The installation of the third wildcard team in each league, I think, has changed the calculus when it comes to where you evaluate a team being in its rebuild, because no longer is it the case that you have to be, say, a 90-win club to make the postseason. Now, if you can get to just like the mid-80s, you can make the playoffs. The Nats just played a series at the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks in the 2023 regular season won a mere 84 games, made the playoffs as a wild card, and did what, right? Won the National League pennant. So things are possible if you can just get to 84, 85, 86 wins. And the Nats, with how things are going right now, can entertain that possibility. I mean, it's not a guarantee. They're not even at 500. We get that. But they're close, and they're playing better. And the offense is doing some good things, and the starting pitching, for the most part, doing some good things. This is not a great series for the starting pitching, but overall, the starting pitching, I think, has been more good than bad. And we can have these thoughts. We can have these conversations that we could not have these last few years. That's for sure. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. Find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. Email the program, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
The right-hander Kent's 3-1 pitch. House swings and rifles one to left field down the line. The Red Wings will take the lead. Baker comes around third to score. Baker's going to give the Wings a 3-2 lead on House's second RBI double in a row.
If you're frustrated with low sex drive, Vyleesi can help. Vyleesi, or bremelanotide, treats low sex drive in women with no daily medication, no alcohol restrictions, and no hormones. Vyleesi is clinically proven to increase your interest in sex. Take control of your sex life on your terms and visit Vyleesi.com to schedule a telemedicine appointment. That's VYLEESI.com. Vyleesi is a prescription medicine used to treat hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, in premenopausal women who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past and have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, situation, or partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to medical, mental health, or relationship problems, or medicine or other drug use. Do not use Vyleesi if you have uncontrolled hypertension or known heart disease. The most common side effects include nausea, flushing, injection site reactions, headache, and vomiting. Consult your healthcare professional for more information and see full PI at Vyleesi.com or call 800-922-1038. Go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to find out if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com.